Hello everybody, I'm Justin Beck.
And I'm Chris Cobb.
And welcome to The Closing, your weekly recap of the top commercial real estate news from this past week. Just a few tasty morsels of commercial real estate goodness to send you off into the weekend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd be lying to you if I told you that I was 100% recovered from this week's ICSC REcon 2018. The activity in Las Vegas, the deals, the discussions, the relationships that we developed over the past several days in Las Vegas was exciting but exhausting. What'd you think about it?
I thought it was great. You know, it was my first ICSC, 2 days, 40,000 steps, 15 miles, hundreds of new contacts. It was fantastic, and it was exhausting from that point, but it was also exhausting because of everyone's energy. Everyone was very optimistic, it seemed. You know, the retail vibe was very positive. People were getting their big boxes filled up and their centers filled up, and we're interested to hear about the Gulf Coast, which I really appreciated because I would love to see some more folks come visit Pensacola on the Gulf Coast.
Definitely a positive vibe. The numbers, they say, were down a little bit from last year, but I thought that the attitude was very optimistic. And a few things that I noticed, you know, a lot of folks are talking about REITs, publicly traded REITs in the retail space, and them being out of favor by Wall Street. But I tell you, there's some really good ones, and we're lucky in the Gulf Coast to have them operating here. One, for instance, is Washington Prime Group. Now, this is a great REIT. They own a property here in Pensacola, and had a chance to spend some time with their CEO, Lou Conforti, a really forward-thinking, smart guy that's not from the mall business. He's got a real estate background, but doing some neat, innovative things there. DDR implementing a strategy to consolidate their properties, be a little bit smarter with what they have. Great group of individuals there running a great operation. And then Regency Centers, you know, they've got some properties in Tallahassee, and I learned while I was there that their overall occupancy across their whole portfolio, which is several hundred properties, is over 96%. So when we talk about retail being down and being in the outs, you have a publicly traded REIT with an occupancy rate of over 96%. That's pretty darn good.
That's pretty darn good, you're right. And I had a similar meeting with Cedarwood, who owns a mall here in Pensacola and also owns one in Panama City. Same thing, we're just trying to talk to them about their leasing, their property management, and both of their centers are 100% leased up right now. They said maybe in the near future, but they're doing pretty good, and they wanted to keep in touch. So it's great to see some of these bigger owners on the Gulf Coast, have basically zero vacancy.
Fantastic stuff at ICSC. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we had a great ICSC as we discussed, but of course, Amazon was on the top of many people's minds. It seems like the threat of them taking over the retail industry has, for some intents and purposes, passed for the time being, but a lot of folks in several cities across the U.S. are still thinking about Amazon all the time as it relates to this HQ2, headquarters 2 for Amazon, but Apple's taken a little different approach, right?
Yeah, they have. So they tried to avoid, I guess, what most sources are calling a beauty contest, and decided to be a little more quiet with their approach to finding an HQ2. So Tim Cook was in North Carolina doing a few things, one of them being giving a speech at Duke's graduation, but met with some city officials and some government officials while he was in Raleigh-Durham area to talk about possibly putting HQ2 for Apple in North Carolina, which I think is a great approach to it. You don't cause a lot of public attention to yourself, maybe gives a little more leverage, but it's also, I think, just a much better way to try to expand and find a new home for your company.
It's typically the more traditional approach. We see in Northwest Florida, we have site selectors come to town representing clients, and very hush-hush about who they're working with, and it seems to be Apple just has a culture of being quiet and being secretive with a lot of the things that they do, so this is not a surprise. But it'd be interesting to see what happens, and if they build another spaceship like they've built in California for their second headquarters. So interesting approach, and be interesting to see what happens. Well, let's stay on the technology theme, but shift over to the all-seeing eye, that is Facebook. Facebook announcing this past week that they are signing the biggest lease ever in San Francisco commercial real estate history, 755,000 square feet of office space in Park Tower in San Francisco. That's a big deal, Chris.
It is. It's the largest lease signed by any company in San Francisco office-wise by 20,000 square feet. Now they have a total of 1.2 million square feet in the San Francisco area. absolutely staggering number to see out there.
I mean, they signed a 436,000 square foot lease last year, and now they're coming on top of it with another 755,000. So it's like 3,000 employees or something.
Yeah, typically when people expand, they need a new office. They typically, about 10, maybe 15% expansion on the office space. But no, let's just go ahead and go from 400 to 755,000. Why not?
That's a big deal.
It is, and it's great though to see for Facebook to keep growing and Facebook to keep growing in San Francisco, which is a place that they've called home for a long time. And who knows, maybe we'll see Facebook look for an HQ2 on the East Coast here coming up soon. We just saw Apple and Amazon searching for one. Maybe Facebook's next on the docket.
That made perfect sense.
Fast casual concept McAllister's, which has been experiencing a meteoric rise in the past couple of years, which has over 400 stores now nationwide, has been expanding into more urban areas. One of them being Atlanta, most recently. They're going to try to go into the West Midtown area, which also has Zaxby's, Kroger's, into a center there. Justin, what do you think about McAllister's expanding into these urban neighborhoods?
Well, you see it with Chick-fil-A going into Midtown Manhattan. You're starting to see it with several other quick serve and fast casual concepts. I think what it's doing is it's validating this idea of densification and rejuvenation of our urban environments. We happen to be sitting right now in the middle of Southtown, which is a great urban development here in Pensacola. And those nationals are coming because the people are moving here, and the incomes are great, and it's a hive of activity, so it makes perfect sense. And as it relates to McAllister's, I have a feeling that we'll be getting some of those soon too. I hope that downtown's lucky enough to be one of the locations that they select as they continue their expansion.
I hope so too. When I lived down in Naples, we had recently just gotten one, and Oviedo had just gotten one right by the University of Central Florida. It's a great concept. I love it. I hope we see one here too.
Multifamily developer Greystar has announced plans to develop several hundreds of apartments near the Washington, D.C. Nationals baseball stadium. This is pretty interesting. We've got a baseball stadium here in Pensacola, and we've got a multifamily developing around it. This seems to be a theme. What are the details on this, Chris?
So it's going to be a 7.3 acre site. They want to have about 1 million total square feet of apartments and maybe a little bit of retail. It's right by the Nationals baseball park, as Justin had mentioned. The site was appraised for about $73 million, but it sold for an undisclosed price, so it's got to become maybe somewhere in that range. Who knows? But what I really like about this is it's very creative from the standpoint of this is an old CSX rail site, and I love to see a lot of the old infrastructure, a lot of the older used pieces of property commercial-wise being used and repurposed for highest and best use and used for something like this. It's great. It can happen in many cities. I know we got a couple sites around Pensacola, I think, that might be good candidates for that, but I love the repurposing of the real estate.
Quality developer, a great use for the land, and we love to see that densification. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. This week's The Closing, fresh back from Las Vegas and ICSC, but still a very active week across the country. Besides retail, we have some fantastic multifamily development going on in Washington, D.C. We've got the technology giants doing big things across the country. And again, a lot of fantastic retail happening. Anything else you want to add to that, Chris?
Nope, that's it. Another great week. Had a blast at ICSC for my first time. Really loving the optimism. I'm feeling it. I'm looking forward to getting on it again next week.
Have a great Memorial Day weekend, everybody, and we'll see you back here next week on The Closing.